We have gotten a lot of questions for the councilman in advance. We're also happy to take more in the chat box as we go along. And looking forward to that whole part of the conversation. Just to give you a sense of the agenda, we're expecting our conversation with Councilman Carlucci to take an hour or a little more, but we're trying to save some time at the end to report back on the recent member survey. Many, many thanks to the 80 people who've taken it and given us good data on who the organization is right now and what our interests are. And we won't have time to dive deep into that, but I want to at least give you the highlights because they're very interesting and they are having a lot to do with the programs and the action that we're planning. So I know a few more people will be drifting in, but I believe in starting meetings generally on time. So let me introduce our speaker. I think most people on this call already know Matt Carlucci, Jacksonville native, founder and head of Matt Carlucci Insurance, longtime service on the city council and 1 year as president. I did not know this because I'm a relative newcomer, authored and fought for the legislation that created the Jacksonville Ethics Commission, and also served on the state's Ethics Commission for 5 years, ending in 2017. And it certainly seemed from the conversation we were all watching carefully that it was the lack of transparency in the process that was at least a strong element in his questions raised about both JEA and the Lot J proposals. We were very grateful for his essential vote to defeat the Lot J proposal. And anything more you need to know about him, I'm assuming he will tell you himself. So welcome. It's a pleasure to have you, Councilman Matt Carlucci. You would now need to unmute yourself.
Okay, starting over. Thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this all day. I've had a busy day, but I really enjoy the exchange and the of ideas and so forth with my constituents. I'm an at-large councilman, so I represent the entire county. And I have actually held this seat. This is my third term of holding this seat, and I was a district councilman one term. And I was born and raised here in Jacksonville. I've been married to my wife, Karen, now for 43 years. We have 2 married sons, 2 wonderful daughter-in-laws, and 4 little troublemaking grandkids. And last January, I celebrated my 40th year as an agent with State Farm Insurance. My activities that I enjoy are, of course, family activities. I love the family activities. And I like learning about Jacksonville history and reading presidential biographies. I enjoy that. Don't ask me why, but I kind of got hooked on that. The first one I read was that big, thick book on Truman by McCullough. Took me 2 years to finish that thing, but what a great read it was. And I like to fly fish, but I'm not here really to talk anymore about myself. And so I'm happy to share my vision and what I want to do for Jacksonville at whatever time that you'd like for me to talk about that.
Well, why don't you start there and
Okay.
give us your priorities, and then I'll feel free to jump in with some of this mountain of questions I've got for you.
Well, I'm still fleshing some things out. You have to understand when you become a candidate for mayor, when you're a council member, we have a Madisonian type of government in Jacksonville. So we have the administrative or executive office, which is what I'm vying for as mayor. And then you have the legislative side, which is the city council. And of course, everybody's got the judiciary side. And so but I want to tell you, I plan to make a clean break from the current culture of our top-down heavy-handed governance, in my opinion, where our people have such little involvement. The current administration, and I don't want to be a negative candidate, but I have to tell you why I'm running and what I want to do differently. But they've tried to move us forward, but we seem to get stuck in ditches, in drama, in another ditch, in another drama. We got to get away from that. And so I'm going to make a clean break from that. The status quo is coming to an end. I'm over it. Okay. So I'm going to bring a bottom up government. Now, don't Google that because I've already tried it and it's a little different from what I'm talking about. But when I say bottom up government, that means that we engage and listen to the public. We will let the citizens of Jacksonville help set the city's agenda. And by making this change, I envision a city that moves forward because we're working together. When we get stuck in JEA issues, Lot J issues, we don't move. We get stuck. We're like in a ditch and a whole lot of drama. I don't like drama. I like, our citizens getting along, working together, respecting differences, all the while loving each other. That's where we need to be in Jacksonville. So that to help set the stage for this new culture, I'm going to do something that's pretty different that I don't think it's been done for a long time. It's been done, but not for a long time. And we're going to start by having community conversations. Our people, neighborhoods, and communities, we're spread over 834 square miles of Duval County, Jacksonville. We're consolidated government, so we're spread out. But we've got to get to know each other better. And it will be a time of community collaboration. And I think it's going to be a time to dream big together. I think we need to dream big. Why can't we dream big? We need to. But it's not, the mayor should want to dream big, but the mayor should want his constituents to dream big. And that's the bottom up that I'm talking about. Our campaign has 4 pillars: integrity, transparency, public involvement, and action. Okay, I turn 65 years old tomorrow. I'm young, I'm in the prime of life, but I'm not taking this job to sit around at a desk in a big chair and look like a mayor. We're going to move action. We're going to move the needle of Jacksonville, Florida forward, and we're going to do it together. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to surround myself with some really smart people. They're going to be a diverse group of talented people who look like Jacksonville. We're going to begin reducing crime rate, actually by asking parents to set higher expectations and values for their children. But not everybody has a functional family. And so you're going to hear this for the first time, but I am going to have a mayor's fatherhood initiative that I'm going to put in place. And for the fathers that might be incarcerated or maybe in the pretrial detention center or just struggling to get their family together, we're going to help. And there's a program that's been going on to this extent for a long time in Washington, D.C. And a couple of other cities. It's very successful. But in addition, I want to have higher expectations of people like me, people like your audience, because everybody here knows that's had children. Sometimes they will listen to me. My children, sometimes growing up, they listen to me now a little better, but when they were growing up, sometimes they would receive instruction and they would receive mentorship better from somebody else, like a baseball coach or a father or a mother in a neighborhood. And so I think we all have to take this initiative upon ourselves when it comes to this crime problem, because the crime starts in like a pipeline, and we've got to stop the pipeline. And the best way to stop that is with what else I want to do, which is having more, well, investing more in Kids Hope Alliance for after school programs and prevention and intervention programs. But I do like mentoring. Abe Lincoln once said that no man stands so tall as when he stoops to help a child. We've got to integrate that into our culture of Jacksonville. We will invest more in our public service programs to help with job placements for our vulnerable, struggling adults, obtain health care, and we're going to work real hard on mental health services. I believe mental health services has been ignored, and the biggest provider of healthcare services, believe it or not, is our jail, and that should not be our biggest mental health care provider. We're going to follow the best practices that are being developed and have been practiced with the homeless population. The best way to approach that is to find homeless people a home, a place to live. It may not be a home that they own, but it's a place where they can call home, and they can receive services and treatment. Going back to mental health, the right kind of mental health treatment can help prevent homeless from going down a further path of bad decisions. We're going to invest in our neighborhoods, our infrastructure. I'm a big proponent of downtown development, and we're going to keep our Jaguars right here in Jacksonville. These are some of my plans, and when implemented, they will enhance our quality of life. When we enhance our quality of life, it's going to develop the perfect environment for economic development, which means better jobs, more jobs, and higher pay and benefits. And I also forgot to mention this earlier. We're going to spend some time getting to know each other in Jacksonville, and we're going to have, in the beginning of my administration, and I'm not talking overconfidently, but you don't run for mayor unless you believe you can win. And I believe I can win. And I believe I'm going to be the next mayor of Jacksonville. And we're going to have community conversations so that the people at the beach, where I guess a good number of your membership is, understand what maybe the issues and problems that the West Side has. And the West Side understands some of the challenges that the beaches have, and all around town. And we're going to probably have about 5 topics that we're going to have a community conversation on. And they're going to be held at times that people can get to these conversations. They'll go for maybe 2 or 3 months. We're going to get to know each other, and we're going to start to love each other in this city. We don't love each other as much as we should. That's just my opinion. I don't think we have as much fun as we should. I want to start having Starry Nights concerts like we used to have. Spring Music Festival. I may have just gone away. I'm seeing nothing but I'm seeing, can y'all see me? I think I just went away.
Nope, you're there. You're there.
I think Althea hit screen share by mistake, I think.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Hold on.
If you see a stop screen share, if you hit that.
You're talking to
Oh,
me?
hey, Nancy
Yeah.
Stapps.
No, I don't see.
Hey, Matt. There we go.
Hey.
So I don't want to go on and on because there's so many things that I want to do, and we can get bogged down in specific issues. But I want to tell you what my eventual vision is for Jacksonville. My vision for Jacksonville is to rid ourselves of this reputation of being a tale of 2 cities, and to show the world how, and I emphasize the word how, we became the tale of 1 city. And that's my vision for Jacksonville. And I will tell you, if we will just invest in ourselves, and we have an investment coming up, I'm sure some people will have questions about that, but we invested in our schools. And if we invest in ourselves and we invest in others from different parts of town and get to know each other, we're going to be the greatest city in the South and perhaps all of the United States of America. So thank you for letting me share some of my platform. That's what's in my heart. That's what's in my soul. And so I hope you like it, because I can't change it, because it's what I believe.
Well, and you have in fact given yourself an entree into one of our questions, which is talk to us about the 12-cent gas tax increase and what you think, both why you support it and what you think it needs to be used for now.
Well, it's not often that you get a mayor that wants to come along and invest in our infrastructure. And I don't want to say this for political purposes, but I don't think it's any secret that Mayor Curry and I don't always get along. We've had a lot of differences, a lot of issues, but if you're going to be a statesman, if you're going to do what you think is right, if you think the mayor is on the right track, then if you love Jacksonville, then we're going to try to help them. And so generally, I support the 6-cent gas tax. I will tell you something interesting. I'm not saying that this is what's going to happen in Jacksonville. I'm not going to tell you that gas prices are not going to go up. But I will tell you that my wife and I were sitting on the back patio this weekend, and we're talking about the gas tax. I mean, we really got to get a life. I mean, I'm telling you, we're talking about the gas tax. So Clay County has a 12-cent gas tax. We have a 6-cent gas tax. Guess whose gas prices are lower than ours? Clay County. So the concern about the price of gas soaring, I'm not going to say it's by 6 cents. I'm not going to say that's not going to happen, but I'm also going to say that sometimes competition moderates that full additional 6 cents. But well, it's not a good time to raise taxes, because taxes are going, gas prices are going up. Well, by the time we pass this thing, gas prices might be going down. They go up and down. I have never been able to figure out gas prices. I know there's supply and demand and all that, but the poor presidential candidates, whoever's in office, and the gas prices start going up on them, and I don't think they can control that. Maybe they can. I don't know. But I just think poor guy, he's trying to, or poor gal, they're trying to, get votes, and everybody's blaming the price of gas on them. But and then some people say, well, wait till President Biden with his infrastructure plan to see how much money we get from that. And I'm glad that the president is doing that. And I think that money may eventually get to us. But I'm not a big fan of waiting on Congress. I'm a fan of action. And I think that this is a reasonable way to take care of a lot of problems that needed correcting in the past. But more so, I think we need to look at this gas tax through the lens of, what is our city going to look like in 2030, 2040, 2050? And then there's the people mover. And I know that'll probably come up here somewhere, so I won't delve too much into that. But I think, if nothing else, we need to be open-minded to that, because it's a completely different system than what we have now. Although the system we got in place will stay in place, but we're going from a just under 3 mile system to almost a 10.5 mile system. So this one will actually go someplace. Whether we want to adopt the full program or not, I'm not sure. The beaches isn't going to benefit from it. I get that. I'm not tone deaf to that. But I voted for taxes that didn't help San Marco any. But I voted for them because they were best for the good of the whole. If the 6-cent gas tax passes, what that will also allow us to do is the money that we were using for some of the projects in the 6-cent gas tax, although we wouldn't be able to use the current money we have now for all of those projects, but we can now use those money to use those dollars in bond dollars that we can use for remediating failing septic tanks. Somebody wrote me a letter, says, well, if their septic tank's failing, they ought to fix it. Well, when we're talking about failing septic tank areas, we're talking about areas that the septic tank, you can try to fix it, but because of the soil conditions, because of the water, the water level underground is so high. This is why we have mounds on septic tanks sometimes. We need to get those failing septic tanks onto water and sewer, and it is real expensive. We have some 60,000 septic tanks in Jacksonville, and 22,000 are failing. And when I say failing, that means a lot of times when parents, because I've seen this. I'm an insurance agent. I'm in people's yards and homes after the storms. The septic tanks are failing, and the children are outside playing. That's not healthy. That's not good for our public health and welfare. But it's also not good for that water to run off into the ditches, which eventually lead into the tributaries. So if you look at our 50 some odd tributaries that run off the St. Johns River, I would say that probably all of them are way polluted more than we could ever guess. The stem of the St. Johns River is not in bad shape, but it's not getting any better because of this problem with the failing septic tanks. So this is a real priority in my book. So, I kind of rambled a little bit there on the gas tax. So I think I'm going to be quiet and let y'all ask more questions and let me try to answer quicker.
Well, this is not an easy one, but it's one that matters to a lot of us.
Well, you told me all the questions were going to be easy.
Yeah, just softballs. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
with consolidation, we have had our underserved communities promised a lot of more equitable funding than they've received. And I know some of the things you're talking about would address some of those issues, but how should the city be tackling the fact that we now have longstanding disparities in our low-income neighborhoods and the priorities of our more affluent communities? How would you negotiate that beyond getting them all together to meet each other?
Well, that's one reason that I'm supportive of this gas tax, is because it will target so many of those discrepancies, as well as propelling us into the future. To me, probably the worst, and I hate to say unfulfilled promise, because the way they did septic tanks years ago is different from the way we do it now. The way they did it back then, they expected the homeowner to hook up to the city sewer lines that were run down the street. But the poor folks that live in some of those vulnerable areas couldn't afford it. And so nothing ever got done. Now, the city of Jacksonville just pays everything. I think it's like a lost leader. Some people say, you shouldn't be paying for a private hookup and all that. And I'm thinking, we can be hard-nosed about that, or we can think about the health of the children that play in those yards where the septic tanks fail, and we can think about the good of the whole of our St. Johns River system. And I'm just tired of people being. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say this, but I just think we need to think about the good of the whole. That's what I think. So, so this is going to take care of a lot of those issues. Now, is it going to all be done? No. There's going to be a lot more money needed to invest in our older neighborhoods. I spent an hour and a half just walking around Edward Waters College yesterday with a a really brilliant couple of young men. One, his name was Anthony. He's an economic development chair of the NAACP, really nice young man. And another transportation and urban planner, his name is Ennis Davis. I don't know if any of y'all ever watch or go online and see this magazine called The Jackson, but he's the one that started the Jackson. And so I met with him and Anthony and another lady. We walked around Edward Waters College. So when you walk around, you see sidewalks that suddenly are not continuous because the palmettos, the trees have grown over into those sidewalk areas. So you have to walk out on the road. There's not many street lights out there. There's a lot of blight. I mean, I walked out there and I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get sanitation, and we're going to get the JEA, and we're going to get public works out here. And we may have a caravan of cars, and we're going to give them a tour of what y'all have just shown me.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to get these sidewalks cleaned up where they're passable, they're walkable, they're safe. We're going to get the areas lit up so they're safe, because see, the problem that they're having is at Edward Waters College, the dormitories, some of them are like 6 to 8 blocks behind or north of Kings Road. And so the conditions are dark and they're not really passable. And then, oh my gosh, the blight that just never gets picked up. We're going to clean that area up. I guarantee it. We're going to clean it up. Now, the problem is going to be making sure it stays cleaned up. And as mayor, I intend to have some type of litter program in place. Because I got to tell you, when this is kind of a funny story, but I put up all my big signs. I love putting up campaign signs. That is a real thrill to me. And I like doing it with my boys. So I would go out putting up my big signs. And I'm going to tell you what, the people on the south side are just as garbagey as anybody else in this town. And right off of Gate Parkway, some of these newer areas where they have the swales where the water gathers right next to the street, they're full of Burger King cups, Burger King, McDonald's, taco, whatever it is. And so I started picking some of this stuff up as if I was going to try to make a dent in this huge area of trash. But the problem is there's no trash cans in the strip malls that line these new streets in our Southeast district. So that's no excuse to throw people's trash out into the ditch. But, you know, we ought to be making an effort to give them a place to throw the trash besides, besides littering. And I think this is where getting to know each other as a community also comes into play. We need to take pride in our community. You know, when I go for my little walks, some trash I just won't pick up, but there's some trash that I'll walk along, I'll pick it up, because in the park in front of our house, it's got trash cans, and I'll throw it in there, you know. But we got to take pride in our city. We have a great city. We really do have a great city. And I think when our schools with a half-penny sales tax, when they start getting brought into the 21st century, when the 6-penny sales tax finalizes itself in whatever form it does, we're going to be on, and we have some good downtown projects that a lot of people don't know about, and I'll talk about that later if you want. But we are going to have maybe the best and greatest city in the South, and maybe in the country. And that's what I want to see.
I want to ask you one follow-up question on the
Okay.
gas tax before we move on to some of your other topics there. Several people have mentioned an article in the Times-Union that talked about the increase in the gas tax in 2014 passed with some of these same priorities in mind, or certainly talked about, and then the money didn't get used that way. They're wondering if there's any way to guarantee that this time around, assuming the gas this gas tax is added, that the money will actually go for these kinds of projects that we're talking about.
Well, I'm doing my best to make sure that happens. This year I happen to be chair of finance. I won't be after July 1st, but while I am now, I'm going to leverage that opportunity. So in talking with the mayor's office about this 6-cent gas tax, I've asked them the project list that they have, are you going to stick to it? And they said, yes, by ordinance code, they'll have to. And I said, well, I would like to see a citizens oversight committee made up of 6 citizens to oversee the finances and the money that's spent, and the other 6 to look at the projects and to make sure they are being that they are being that the work's being executed on those projects as they're supposed to be. And they have agreed to that. I sent one of the administration officials today a letter confirming that he agreed with that. And then the other thing that I have done is I've asked, and I'm not trying to brag on myself, this is just, I think like, you guys do. So one of the things I'm thinking is, okay, we've come up with a bunch of projects, but the people haven't had a say so here yet. So they have agreed to have 5 large public hearings in the 5 geographical areas of the at-large councilman in Jacksonville. And those public hearings will be like, and I'm sure y'all have been to some DOT public, if you get there the first hour, they got certain stations set up. One's on the people mover, maybe one's on drainage, maybe one's on pedestrian safety, and maybe one's on road extensions or road repairs, drainage repair, whatever. But the first hour, people will be able to come and go to those stations and talk to the engineers and the people that are the experts of those particular areas of the gas tax and how it'll be spent and what for. But then it'll transition after an hour or so, it'll transition into a regular town meeting, and the JTA will get up and talk about people mover. The public works will get up and talk about the drainage issues. Traffic engineering will get up and talk about streets that'll be widened, repaired, bridges that'll be repaired. We got some bridges in this town that they're not big ones. I'm not talking about the big ones. I'm talking about, some of the smaller ones, but their infrastructure is crumbling, they're old, and they need to be addressed. And we're gonna have 5 of these meetings, because if you don't get the public involved, engaged, they're not gonna feel like they have any ownership in it, number one. And number two, they will point out issues that the city public works or the administration or the council or the JTA or the JEA haven't thought about, don't know about, because they're not always out into the neighborhoods where the people live that would come to these meetings. And I've seen that happen time and time again. And I'm just doing my best to make sure that, we get this out before the public and we come up with a program that works, that's good. There might be some give and take on the people mover. I don't know, we'll see. I believe we need to keep an open mind to the people mover, but I also think that they need to make sure that they're telling us what market plans, establish their plans to extend the people mover in certain areas. Why is there anything that can bring the cost down on those? And a lot of questions that I hear from people every day, I sent the JTA, or I'll be sending the JTA those questions on Monday. I have to say though, I'm a big fan of Nat Ford, who is the CEO of the JTA. Remember, government's not perfect. Remember, anybody here who's ever added on to their house and something just didn't quite go right, well, city, has the same problem sometimes. So I'll stop with that.
Well, let me shift you over. You started to mention downtown. If you were in charge now and could wave your wand, what would be your top 3 downtown development ideas? And are any of them actually in motion?
Oh my gosh. how I wish I had a magic wand and I could start it right now. I tell you what I would do. And this idea came to me when I first got elected and they were wanting to tear down the landing. And the people had no say so in that. And I felt they should not tear down the landing until they knew what was going to replace it. And so I tried to have a land use planner come and talk about the landing and have charrettes. Now in Jacksonville, we got to get over the fact that charrettes is a French word. And some folks just don't like, they got to get over it's a French word, but it's a great way to collaborate and listen to our people and see what they think would be a great idea for our landing, but we never got there. So my idea is this: we've got a lot of green grass on the riverfront, don't we? A lot of it. The courthouse has been torn down. The old city hall has been torn down. The landing's been torn down, and then the shipyards. That's all green. If I was mayor today, I would work with the DIA to bring in the very best urban land planner that we could find for Jacksonville, and I would have the DIA and the urban land planner work with the public at convenient times and bring them together and have charrettes. And let's hear what the people want for downtown. That doesn't mean that the people always want what's best, but I tell you, urban land planners, they can pick up on things that people say and come back with renderings at a second meeting. And everybody's like, wow, I mean, this is actually kind of what we're thinking about. And it's not a development du jour on each of these different properties. And when you have a land planner that does it in an organized fashion, and he or she is looking at the whole property, all those properties and how they connect and how they interplay with each other, how they interplay with parks. There's a lot of organizations, River Parks Now, that wants to get engaged, but they're feeling a frustration. There's other people that want to get engaged. They don't feel like they have a say. I will say this: the landing is going through a process where there's a competition of different companies and land planners to bring before Jacksonville's DIA, working with the people what might be great ideas for the landing. So I think that's a step in the right direction. But the landing is just one singular property. We got a lot of properties. We need to make sure they connect together and everything makes sense. So I would have a series of charrettes, probably take 3 or 4 months to have that done, and see if we could build a consensus on what we envision for the future of Jacksonville's riverfront. And I think the citizens of Jacksonville deserve to be a part of that process and a big part of that process. And if they're not, shame on us. That's why I'm saying we will have a bottom-up government, not a heavy-handed top-down government. I'm over that. People want to be heard. They want to engage. And then when they are engaged and they feel like everybody is really listening to them, whether they get what they want or not, they feel an ownership in what we are producing and what we are developing in downtown. And so I could really get on my soapbox on that, but I'll let it go at that.
Well, and agree with that good point. In continuing to talk about downtown, though, I know another of the things you want and most of the public wants is to keep the Jags here and keep them happy. And certainly during the conversations about Lot J, it was clear they have other development plans they'd like to see. There's going to be revisions to the stadium. Where do things stand in terms of both balancing the city's other needs and keeping the Jags happy? How do we do that?
Well, I think we need to always keep the Jaguars in Jacksonville. I'm a big believer in that. And some people thought by my not voting for Lot J, I was endangering the Jaguars maybe leaving. I didn't believe that for a second, not over Lot J. And now what they would leave us for is if we don't take care of enhancing the stadium. That's just a NFL fact of life. And in addition, you know, my wife and I, we buy season tickets almost like a patriotic duty to our city, even though we don't go to most of the games because it's so daggum hot. But, so we need to dome this stadium of ours. I think probably what we'll have is I don't think we'll have a complete tear down of our stadium and build a brand new one straight up. But I think we'll have a major overhaul of our stadium. I think it'll be domed. I hope it will be. And the Jaguars are good for Jacksonville. So that's expensive. So you say, well, how are you going to afford to do that? Let me tell you, there's so many issues before us that are not cheap. So I'm going to digress for just a second. But and by the way, Lot J, that was negotiated by the mayor's office. It should have been negotiated by the Downtown Development Authority. And I think the Jaguars now understand clearly not to negotiate with anybody but the Downtown Investment Authority. That's not a slight at the mayor's office, but that's not, it says in the ordinance code, the sole agency to negotiate these type of developments is the Downtown Investment Authority, because they will require a market plan, feasibility study, a look at the financials, and so on and so forth, and to actually know what it's going to look like when it's built. All those things I just told you about, none of that was done with Lot J. So they have put Lot J aside, but that is a low area, and and I've spent a lot of time helping the city develop a resiliency plan. We're going to have our first chief resiliency officer in Jacksonville's the last city of our size to even, I mean, everybody else has got a chief resiliency officer, and they're executing and passing good policy on resilience. Our ability to pop back after a bad storm, our ability to direct flooding elsewhere or to mitigate flooding with the planting of trees or natural shorelines, so on and so forth. But that's a very expensive issue in and of itself, is preparing for the way our sea levels are rising. And at the beach, that's a big one for your families and your children who will hopefully grow up at the beach maybe. And so we have a lot of big issues ahead of us, and we can't keep addressing them with the same nickel. So when I become mayor, I'm going to want to do a lot of these things we've been talking about, including the Jaguars. I will have to see what kind of money we have, that's available at first. What is the new budget going to look like? How much additional revenue are we going to bring in from ad valorem taxes and sales taxes? The budget traditionally grows each year, although the pandemic put a little dent in that. In the recession back in 2008, 9, and 10, 11, put a big dent in that. But I won't propose any kind of a tax increase until people actually believe, for the most part, not everybody's going to believe this, but believe that we're using our money to the best of our ability. But if we're going to progress, there may come a time when we have to have an increased revenue from some place, like a 6-cent gas tax. I believe people will chip in extra money if they have faith, knowing where and what the money will do.
Mhm.
And so if we're going to progress, if we're going to have, like my wife and I, don't ask why, we're not old, but I did get my Medicare card the other day. I went, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got a Medicare card already. So anyway, that's a joke. I'm trying to be funny there, for those that want to laugh along with that. But anyway, it's a real passage for life for me. Anyway, but we've invested some money in our house because we happen to have some money that we could invest to do some improvements. It's our last round of improvements that we're going to make here. And so we can enjoy this house for the next 20 years or so. And then we'll have to buy a little bungalow somewhere, downsize. And so we'll let you know when the garage sale is going to happen. But we got to invest in our city, and we can't keep rubbing the two same nickels together, expecting to get better results. That's the definition of insanity. And so, but you can't begin to raise taxes, revenue, however politically correct way you want to say it, until people actually believe you're using your current money on hand to the best of your ability first. But we've got to invest in our city. And so that's the only way we're going to be able to do new stadium improvements, tackle resilience, and continue to tackle the areas of town that we need to fulfill those commitments that were made many years ago. And that's a sensitive subject with me because my daddy was on the first consolidated city council, and my daddy pushed hard for a lot of those improvements. And a lot of people don't remember back in 1968 that there were 600 million gallons a month of raw sewage pumped into the St. Johns River. 600 million. U.S. World News Report called our city's river, the St. Johns River, a flowing cesspool. And I got the magazine. So, you know, those council members back then did a lot to direct sewage to the Buckman sewage plants and other sewage plants around the city, and to the outfalls that were draining all this sewage into the river. They stopped them, and and that's when Hans Tanzer back in the day finally felt it might be safe to go water skiing. And his biggest fear was not getting up the first time when he had these two beautiful girls from Cypress Gardens on both sides of him. But he got up, the big strapping man that he was, he got up on the skis. And then when he finally came to the end of his skiing trip, and they interviewed him, he said, the St. Johns River is now open for swimming. And so the stem of our river is still in pretty good shape from those days. It's the tributaries that are really a big mess. And so I can't remember the question I was asked and how I came around to that, but I hope that was somewhat informative anyway.
One of the people in the meeting here is saying a lot of the things that you're describing are very appealing, the bottom up approach to governance and finding a way to collaborate with our NFL team and keep them happy while not burning the entire budget on them. Are there cities that you're looking at as models for some of these kinds of changes in how we approach governing Jacksonville?
Well, there's one I've had my eye on for a long time, and that is Charlotte. Greenville, South Carolina is another city that I've had my eye on. Oklahoma City is another one. So we take all these trips with the chamber, and they're good to have. They're good to go on, but it seems like, you know, when we get back and sometimes we accomplish some things from examples we see from other cities, but a lot of times we don't. I like the trips. I think we ought to have a damn trip to Jacksonville, Florida, and have the people that want to go on those trips stay in one of the hotels downtown, and then see what we have here in Jacksonville for them to go look at. Might be a wake-up call. The mayor's office appointed a committee of you know, some very high-profile civic leaders to make suggestions of what needs to be done downtown, taking care of the homeless, investing money in some of the older buildings and so forth. Well, we've been talking about that for years. They weren't talking about anything new. But the one thing they missed, and I'm not trying to be critical here, but I am trying to point out where we keep missing the boat. They didn't say anything about including the public in getting their point of view on downtown and what downtown should be like. And these civic leaders are smart. They do a lot of great things for Jacksonville. But remember, we have people that want to be engaged. And so that's a big deal to me. Now, what Jacksonville also, I think, needs to quit doing to a degree, we always try and hit the daggum home run. always trying to hit a home run with a downtown development, some kind of big downtown development. It's a home run. Well, right now, we've got some 13, 14 buildings that private investors have bought, and they are renovating them, preserving them, like the Laura Street Trio. And these buildings are more than just a building to them. These buildings they're bringing them back to life. And so in about 4 years, those 13 buildings will be built. There'll be 2 little grocery stores downtown, all within a quarter mile, a walkable area. There will be a cluster of apartments, retail, 2 actual grocery stores downtown. And they're happening, but nobody hears about it because they're singles and doubles. But singles and doubles, to anybody here that likes to watch baseball, that keeps up with baseball, singles and doubles, they are what win the baseball games, and then the occasional home run. And so that's my approach, is that, yeah, I want to hit some home runs, but in sales, I was taught a long time ago, when I first started my sales business, State Farm Insurance, I sell insurance, and I was told to build your business by the inch is a cinch, by the yard is hard. And so some agents would try to always go after that big building, that big commercial. I didn't do that. I wrote every home I wrote, I tried to write the 2 autos, and that's the inch by the inch is a cinch. They weren't big premiums, but if you write enough of them, you build a really great agency, and that worked for me. So yeah, let's shoot for some home runs. But man, I'm excited about these doubles and singles, and nobody's paying attention to them, but I am. Oh, one other thing too, if you go downtown, and I'm going to delve into this issue before long. If you go downtown Jacksonville, there's a lot of retail stores in these big, Wells Fargo buildings and some of these other large buildings down, but nobody knows they're in there, and they can't put signs out. So I'm going to propose that we modify our sign ordinance in the designated downtown area, so that somebody can hang out a shingle and say, we got a coffee shop in here, or there's a lunch and breakfast place in this building, or there's a boutique in here. These small businesses are wanting people that are walking by the sidewalks that don't know they're in there to know they're in there, so they can do a little business. So, it's the little things in life that sometimes really make a big difference.
I've got, while you were talking, the home runs and singles and such, a sports question. One of our folks points out that of the fastest growing cities in the US, none have professional football. Has anyone, DIA or anyone else, done the cost benefit analysis of what having the Jags is for us?
Well, I think that is a true statement. I don't know for sure, but I've heard enough about it and read enough about it, and it doesn't necessarily surprise me. But I look at the pro football team here in a little different light than a lot of people do. I'm outside, so we got owls hooting and we got kids playing basketball, so I hope y'all are able to hear me. But so let me tell you what happened just before the Jaguars got here, and y'all will remember this. There was about a 6-month to a year span when we lost Independent Life Insurance Company, we lost American Heritage, we lost Gulf Life, we even lost our big State Farm regional office here in Jacksonville. We lost a couple of other big insurance anchors. And I'm going to tell you, the city of Jacksonville fell in a funk in a big way. And we got out of that funk. It took us a while. We got out of it, but we didn't feel good about ourselves. When we got the football team, we began to feel good about ourselves again a bit. I'm not going to say everybody did, but a lot of people did. And I like I've known Jay Godbold since I was a little boy. And what he said about the football team was it was a way to bring the poor, the rich, the black, the white, everybody that lives in the city, calls it home, that has the same right to pursue happiness, brought them all together. And for once, we could see people loving on each other or liking to hate the Jaguars because they weren't doing very good, maybe. But I just believe there's a cultural value to the Jaguars that is irreplaceable. So I'm not going to sit here and say that the Jaguars have brought us into some economic development mecca, but I don't think they've hurt. And I think if we lost them, it would hurt.
Okay, that's a helpful answer. I have so many questions we haven't gotten to. I'm honestly just trying to decide before we wear you out completely what we can get to. This is an interesting one. So at this point, you and Al Ferraro are the announced candidates, and then there's Daniel Davis raising money and standing in the wings thus far. Why are you the best person for the job?
I'm the only one that's represented the entire city of Jacksonville going on 12 years. So I know every square inch of Jacksonville. I'm a small business owner who almost lost his business and rebuilt it and overcame adversity with that. I understand our government better than I think any of the other candidates will, because I grew up in it and I've studied it. And I know our past, and we don't want to look to the past, except that we can't forget the past, but we got to reach into the future while never forget the past. In addition, I believe that I have the best vision for Jacksonville. But now I haven't heard any other visions yet, and I'm not being critical. We're very early. I got in early because I ran for mayor one time before, and I come close, but I got in so late I couldn't raise enough money quick enough to defend myself. And the other undeclared candidate, he's raised, Lord have mercy, he's raised like almost $2 million. But you know what? I'm not going to look at, I'm going to stick to my knitting. We're going to raise the money we need. We'll have $700,000 by the end of this month. And we've got almost 500 contributors. That's more than anybody to date that I know of. And we've got a great enthusiasm for our campaign because I'm talking about Jacksonville having fun again, a plan where people get to participate. And we've got a lot of energy. And I'm going to tell you now, one of the candidates one of the soon-to-be candidates has raised a whole lot of money, and God bless him. I wish I had that much money too, but I don't. Our money comes in differently. It comes in through the traditional ways. The $10 contribution, 100, 200, all the way up to 1,000. But I'll tell you what, we have got 2 cork boards, those big cork boards that you buy like at Ready Arts or wherever, Michael's, whatever. And we pin every note of people that say, we love you, we believe in you, we're praying for you, whatever. And we're going on our 3rd board. And that's what keeps me driving. And again, I'm a salesman. If I make a goal, I'm going to meet it. And I'm just going to tell you, I will be the next mayor of Jacksonville. And we're going to start having fun in Jacksonville again as a community. And we're going to work together, and we're going to play together. And sometimes we'll even have to cry together. But we're going to be the best city in the United States of America if I have anything to do with it.
Okay. Our group is nonpartisan. We have in fact been for both Republicans and Democrats, but as the Republican Party becomes what many of us consider more radical, or at least further from the Republicans that are
crazier. Would that be the word you're looking for? Crazier?
Crazier, yes, that's good. I would take that. how would you as mayor stand up against this deeply radical Republican legislature and preserve things like home rule or the ability to public protest, any of those things? How would you manage? How would you navigate?
I got a stiff backbone and I'll stand up to it. I don't believe in partisan politics at the local level. When you're mayor, you are representing Republicans, Democrats. My wife's an MPA, white people, Black people, Hispanic people, Asian people. You're representing everybody. And you start getting partisan, then you're starting to slice out a big part of the community. I'm never going to do that. I'm going to represent this entire community. And I've been doing this a long time. I've lost elections and I've won more than I've lost. And the ones that I've won them big. But the ones that I lost broke my heart. But I'm going to tell you, when you lose an election and it breaks your heart, or anything in your life that breaks your heart, will make you think deeper and love deeper and be more committed to what is right. And I don't have the I don't have the fear of losing. I've lost. There's life after politics. But I'm going to tell you this: our family, just like many of these families here, I'm sure, have put a lot into Jacksonville, Florida, and I want my city to be the best it can be. And I think I got the best message for it because I'm including the people. And I'm going to be a strong leader, but I want followership leadership. I don't know if that's a word, followership, but you know, a very smart man and a mentor to me used that expression. I said, I like it, because you can't lead if you don't have people behind you. Mm-hmm. So I have no patience for that. And I will tell you, I've already spoken to I'm a Republican, but I've spoken to, and we have a great Republican party leader here, Dean Black. I respect him greatly. He's a gentleman. He has a job to do. I understand that and I respect it. But I've also spoken to the Democratic Party leader, because I'm going to be representing Democrats as well. I'm not carving out anybody, and that doesn't always make my Republican Party real happy with me. But I think they know by now, because I've endorsed Democrats and I've endorsed Republicans. Makes them mad when I endorse Democrats, but if I think that particular Democrat, like once upon a time, Nat Glover was the best qualified for a job of being mayor at the time, and John Payton and I get along very well. I love him. I love his family, and they're beautiful people. We ran against each other, but I endorsed his opponent when he got into the runoff, but he won. But I did what I thought was right, because I'm going to tell you, Nat Glover is a great man. And I also have to say that endorsement has aged well for me over the last 20 years. So I'm not afraid of partisan. People want to get partisan with me. I'll listen to them because I have to represent them. But they just have to understand I have to do what I think is best for the whole. And I think that's what's missing in our country today. And I think redistricting is the way it's done today. It's almost hard to break, but you got lily white districts and you got Democratic districts that maybe are more populated with Black folks. And I think everybody needs to represent a good percentage of other parties and other type of people. And we get better government with that. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. So last question, and we're going to let you off the hot seat. What are you proudest of in your tenure on city council?
I would say two things if I can. I've served a long time, and I've made a few votes I wish I could take back, but I can always say that I've never got myself in trouble. I've never been accused of doing anything that was unethical. And that means a lot to me because I tell you, when you get over 60, it don't take much to make you tear up a bit, okay? But that was that was important to my daddy, to my mama. So that right there is one. And I think the other would be I created the Jacksonville Ethics Commission, and the powers to be back in those days did everything they could stop it. And I had good help in John Delaney in getting that passed. He wasn't mayor at the time, but he was the general counsel for Ed Austin. And I will tell you, and I don't know where y'all fall on the JEA, but I was not for selling the JEA. I was not for that with good reason. But it was Carla Miller and the Ethics Commission that really played the biggest role in stopping that major fiasco from happening in our community. And I look back at that and I think it all came from, I took a dusty study off the desk. It actually was a grand jury report. And some of the best ideas I've got by taking studies off the desk or off a shelf, flip through it. Grand jury recommendation was that we have a local ethics commission. And so, and I was very honored to be able to serve on the Florida Commission on Ethics from 2012 to 2017. And I was chair one year, and we had some great ethics reform in Tallahassee. If you can actually believe that, we actually did. And so, in doing things that will make, y'all gonna think I'm a crybaby, but that will make things better for little Jack Carlucci, little Joseph Carlucci, little Matthew Carlucci, and my little Lily Kate. God bless her soul. People say, why do you always put Lily Kate, your granddaughter, on Facebook? You never put your grandsons. And I say, because she's my favorite. But not really. I love them all equally, but Lily Kate has a way of making my heart melt. So that's who we're looking to. So my little pack that I got some money in it, but not like others. But we called it because my daddy had a saying when he first ran for office. I remember this more than anything. When he first ran for office, you got a little free time on Channel 4. My daddy would say, a politician looks to the next election, a statesman looks to the next generation. So we named our pack Next Generation Jacks. And if anybody would like to write out a check for $100,000 payable to Next Generation Jacks, we would not be offended. And I'll be happy to give you the mailing address if you need it. Just give me a call tomorrow. That was a joke. Anyway, but we're going to win. And let me tell you, I've worked hard to not be an absentee at-large council member at the beaches. I heard that from Scott Wiley and from some other wonderful council members down there. Don't be an absentee council member. And I've worked real hard to be at the beach as much as I can and make myself available to the beach as much as I can. So I love you all. And if there's anything else you want to ask, great. If not, I will let y'all get on with your meeting, and I'm going to go get a little chow downstairs.
We really appreciate you coming. And I want you to know the last thing in the question box is someone saying, encouraging you to highlight the integrity we've seen on display with your willingness to speak up against prevailing mistakes and stupidities. She said it less politely than that. And we hope you'll keep it up. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay. You're welcome. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you'll have me back sometime.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. God bless you. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay. Thank you all. And my apologies to anybody whose question didn't get asked. We got a lot of them in, but we needed to have a little time for ourselves, and I didn't want to completely wear him out. I think we covered a lot of ground. And for those of you who are still with us, a quick overview of what we got from the BAM survey, which Carol will be sharing with us on screen. I'll go over the questions. Well, we'll go through the questions because some of you didn't take it, but we asked you to rank the area that is most important to you. And what this chart shows you is the math of trying to show you everything that everybody came in would just cross your eyes. But essentially what we did was take the groups that anyone had put 1 or 2. This is how ranked choice voting would be so confusing if we ever get to it. And what you can see is we obviously want a focus locally more than we want the national, even though there are certain national issues that matter to us. That's been true for BAM pretty much from the beginning. I think it still is, and we'll continue to try to cover the full waterfront, but it's interesting to see where we came out. The next question was again asking people to tell us, here, let me see if I can get myself out of the way, what you care about most, and everybody was allowed to pick 4. And again, because of the ranked choice nature of this, nothing's going to come out entirely, nothing's going to come out to 100%, but these are the top 10. There was nothing on our list that people were not interested in, and several people raised other issues, but clearly that partisan redistricting that irritates us all is everybody's top fear. Environment and climate, next in line. Looking at the 2022 elections, very much on everyone's minds, even though, well, we'll be getting to that. 43, following and influencing both the good and bad in legislation at the state level is why I've been peppering everyone with so very much information about the legislative session. The national election law reform, though, is a close second in terms of people's focus. And I see someone is trying to ask a question. Linda, now that we are down to a relatively few people, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask me a question. These tend to be where we're going to focus most of our programs and a lot of our action this year. Again, I'm trying to see where Linda is so I can unmute her. Linda Fisher, can you unmute yourself? I'm happy for you to ask a question.
Hey, Linda.
It's the little microphone in the bottom corner. Or you can put a question in the chat. I'm going to move on, but I'll come back around if we
Yeah,
need.
perhaps she accidentally raised her hand.
Yeah, there's been an accidental hand raised.
Yeah, I did not try to ask a question.
Oh, okay. Well, don't worry about your hand then.
Yeah, I was just trying to get you back on my screen.
Oh, okay.
Hey,
I'm sorry.
Linda.
I'm
Hey,
accessible. Don't worry about me. Third screen had to do with what we want to do. How do we want to act on the things we care about? And vote by mail, which was one of our top priorities the last several years, still high, and given what is likely to be happening in Tallahassee will be even more important since a lot more people's vote by mail will be lapsing if they pass some of the nonsense they're trying to pass. We know we have enthusiastic postcarders. It's not a year we've been doing a lot of that, but we'll see if it makes sense moving forward. Voter registration and helping ex-felons register to vote very closely following. And I want to mention this item number that with 26% interest, being part of a team that follows a specific issue. There's so very much going on and so many issues we care about. Enlisting our membership who already are passionate about various interests to help us keep track of the issues, to help us plan programs. We would love to have more of that because I'm still learning how to use SurveyMonkey. We started the survey by sending it out in our regular newsletter. which meant many of the first people to take it, about half of the people who took it anonymously because they just had a link and they took it. If you funnel it through SurveyMonkey, you can know who took it. And therefore, if somebody said, I'd like to be part of the climate change group, I can know who they are. So to the extent you're interested in being part of a issue specific team, or the next thing, this letters to the editor group, all of the publications love letters to the editor. We have a lot of articulate writers, but the Times Union doesn't want the same person showing up in the letters to the editor. So having a larger group that can collaborate, think about points to make, and different ones submit at a given time is a better way to keep our voice in the public. If you're interested in either of those things, or frankly, anything that we're talking about, be sure that you send an email to the Beaches, to BAM's Gmail account, which is Beaches Activist Singular Movement at Gmail. And I put it in the newsletter most weeks, but be sure that we know. Same for helping with the social media team. There's just, again, I will be in touch with people whose names I have who expressed a specific interest, but if you don't hear from me, that means you probably took the survey anonymously and therefore need to let us know. Moving on. We wanted to know if we were wearing everybody out with our emails. Back last July, people wanted regular updates to know what they could do to affect the election. We were concerned that maybe the routine of a weekly or bi-weekly email was becoming too much. For the most part, no. There are a handful of people who wish they were hearing from us a little less. We don't have the technical capability to wall them off. So I'm glad you're okay with it. And I promise as soon as the legislative session is over, I won't be completely burying people in commentary. For the most part, not very many things missing. Again, some interesting ideas that people suggested, and we'll be looking into some of those, but not any big topics missing, though there again, if something interesting crosses your path or a meeting takes place or a demonstration you think we should know about, never hesitate to send those to me because we glean from a wide universe of information. It's sad to me that half our people don't Zoom. Those that do are very happy. And seem to like what we're doing. And in fact, several people said they look forward to meeting in person again, but they hope we wouldn't entirely give up Zoom because it's convenient not to have to go anywhere. They miss the social part, and so do we. But we can also recruit some speakers that we wouldn't get if they had to travel to get to us. So I look forward to when we have a dilemma deciding how we're going to manage that mix. And I like to know that about a third of the people who aren't coming are in fact looking at the videos, which is one of the reasons we've tried to pay so much attention to making the quality workable. And my favorite, when we were asking other things are there other things we should be doing? We got some individual suggestions that are good, and we'll be using some of those, but the 75% of the people who had an answer liked the idea of planning meetings in concert with other progressive groups, both to kind of get to know other people and also to have a bigger footprint with a topic. And the good news about that is, our last slide, we have done that. The BAM, Beaches Democratic Club, Jacksonville Now, Mandarin Indivisible, and the local League of Women Voters have all come together to start conversations about how we can do more work together, both on the ground and in meetings. And the first one we have planned is this meeting coming up this time next week with Desmond Meade, the co-founder of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition and the man who knows more than anyone else about what the status is of restoring voting rights to our ex-felons. So I hope you will all plan to come to that and spread that invitation around. I've sent it out a time or two. I'll be sending it out one or two more times before the meeting. And any questions?
I have a question. Me.
We can hear you, Althea.
You can hear me?
Speak up.
Okay, I have a very important question for me at least, and I hope it's very important for the rest of you. How do we become nonpartisan? I was the founder of this group, and it sure as hell was not nonpartisan. I'd like to know from every one of you who are listening on this Zoom message right now, what Republican issue do you agree with? Do you agree with what the restrictions are in the state of Georgia, that they're only putting up one ballot voting box per county, that none of us from BAM could take a vote from someone that's by mail and take it to the ballot? They have to take it themselves. They are limiting the number of hours. This is all Republican. And if you think it's not, check it out. Look online. These are the Republican issues. And it's not just Georgia, it's the state of Florida. The state of Florida right now, tomorrow, is considering whether or not to impose felony charges against anybody who's involved in a group that's demonstrating, and 2 or 3 people get into a tussle. Everybody gets put in jail and charged with a felony. That's a Republican issue. That's not a Democratic issue. And I know that I am rabid about the Democratic Party, but they represent my needs. And I don't like us portraying to visitors, to speakers, or to anyone else that we are nonpartisan. As far as I'm concerned, we are so partisan that it's inappropriate to say that. And it's been said twice in our board meetings, and each time I have not had an opportunity to take issue with it, and that's why I'm taking issue with it now. How many people in this group who are listening right now consider yourself to be a Republican? Consider yourself to be in agreement with what the state of Georgia is doing about voter registration? And how many of you agree that if you're a participant in a protest and somebody over on the periphery gets in a fight, that you get put in jail and you get charged with a felony? How many people agree with those things? How many people agree with what Carlucci said about, well, we're going to make this 6% tax work? They're not. Look at what was said. David Berline wrote an article a week ago, 2 weeks ago, about what happened in 2014, and I suspect some of you read it. They imposed a 6 cents tax, and they didn't use any of the money for exactly what Mr. Carlucci was talking about, for septic tanks, for rebuilding areas in the poorer parts of Jacksonville. Drive into those poorer parts and see what it's like. It's horrendous. Big potholes. They never do anything about the poorer areas. Do you see any potholes up here in Atlantic Beach? If you do, they're going to get cleaned up pretty quickly. I just want to express my opinion. And
There are plenty.
pardon me, what'd you say, Steve?
There are plenty of potholes in Atlantic Beach.
You think? Go
Yeah.
compare them.
Oh, yeah, just drive around.
Yeah, compare them to the Black community.
No, but well, we have a Black community, but yeah, I was just getting off on that.
See, there are plenty of Black communities you can drive.
I think we have potholes on 6th because our wonderful drainage system, which is a converted crown that solved Howell Park, created some potholes. We just fill them in and we go on. But I understand what you're saying.
Nancy's got a suggestion.
So I don't think any of us would identify as Republican, but I think it's important to understand the difference between someone who is a Republican and someone who espouses some of the more radical things. And of course, we all agree HB1 is awful. We agree with almost everything you said. However,
Terroristic.
let me point out, for example, the mayor of Atlantic Beach, who I have donated money to, was a registered Republican, Ellen Glasser, and she's the best candidate we had, and I think has done an excellent job. Okay. I heard Matt Carlucci say he wants a citizens oversight committee for this gas tax and he wants public hearings for the gas tax. Is that perfect? Probably not. But I think we have to be realistic in looking at what our alternatives are. Sometimes there's no Democrat in the race. And what it got us last time was Mayor Curry, okay? And I think, you know, maybe I'm crazy, but I'm more interested in what ideas and things could be brought forward. I'm not saying there's a lot of Republicans I would stand behind, but I would also say if you come out as blatantly partisan, there are many people who won't give us the time of day and won't, you know, agree to speak before our group. So I think you have to be careful with what you say. I think it's important that we say we are champions of voting rights, similar to the League of Women Voters, who does phenomenal job with voting rights, reproductive rights, etc. I'm not saying any particular way is good or bad, or all good or all bad. All I'm saying is I think you can be nonpartisan and be very effective, and it almost shows that you are open-minded, and that's, I think that's important.
We are progressive.
We are
That's what
progressive,
we
and I agree, you know, that in Atlantic Beach, the candidates for mayor or city council commissioner don't announce what they are within the parties, and I think that's appropriate. And this is a small town, and we don't need to fight a Republican or Democrat in this small town. But I do not like us being portrayed to anybody or any group as nonpartisan, because we're not. The only way we're nonpartisan is by corporation, because we had to make a decision when we signed up as a corporation, and we had to sign that up. So in that sense we did, but we don't have to announce that to the world. And I just dislike very much this group being identified as anything other than who we are. As Steve says, we're progressives. I do not know one thing that I agree with on the Republican Party. And I'm not rigid in the sense of disliking everything that's Republican. I am wise enough, and I have lived long enough to recognize that they are totally in opposition to what I stand for and what I want this group to stand for. And that's my statement.
I have one note to add before we close. Though I'm already promoting perhaps too many meetings, because I hope everyone on this call will consider coming to the Desmond Meade Zoom next week, but also a preview looking forward to May. Our May meeting on the 13th is going to be another of the priority issues that the group at large identified as a priority for them. COVID has obviously hit our town hard. There is so much need and there is so much good work being done. And 4 of the groups that are real leaders in serving our community, the Sulzberger Center, Beam, Mission House, and Feeding Northeast Florida, are all going to speak in a panel to us to talk about the work they're doing and the ways we can help. It's an important meeting, and I hope people will put it on their calendars now. And I promise I will be promoting it to you a lot. At any rate, thank you all.
Thank you.
And I'm having dinner now.